So I guess I was thinking we could actually go through the actual lesson that the church has in terms of what they have, just so that people can see what that looks like when you're actually like looking at the church's produced materials and how we work through that and what that looks like. But totally open, Ramses, to going wherever you feel you want to go with this. And if anybody has questions or things that they want to bring up, this isn't necessarily something that has to follow any specific plan structure. But I mentioned this, we had kind of started talking about this last time, and I mentioned this to Ramses. I really kind of wanted to start with Declaration 1, only because that is where Wilfred Woodruff kind of gives, I think, the quote that many people look back to say, this is why we have to follow what the prophets say, or that kind of a thing. So I'll just read it real quick, and then Ramses, maybe you can go where you want to with that and people can chime in. So let me find it. Declaration 1, it says this: the Lord will never permit me or any other man who stands as president of this church to lead you astray. It is not in the program. It is not in the mind of God. If I were to attempt that, the Lord would remove me out of my place, and so he will any other man who attempts to lead the children of men astray from the oracles of God and from their duty. So yeah, I think that is what I hear people turning to when we say, well, this is obviously what the ban on the priesthood was revelation, because God wouldn't allow prophets to lead us astray. That is typically the line of thought that I hear. So yeah, Ramses, we kind of talked a little bit about this, but why don't you?
So where I believe what President Woodruff was trying to say is that he feels that the Lord wouldn't allow a prophet to do something that was not in the best interest of the church. And where I understand his perspective, where I politely disagree, is that in that verbiage, if you look at it and you think about it, and it's not, see, I think where we get in trouble is we continue to want to believe that prophets are perfect, and they're not, unfortunately, because they were imperfect people when they became the prophet, or they became the bishop, or the president, or so forth, so on. In his heart, I think what he had good intentions, but his statement goes against one of the cornerstone beliefs of the church, is that we have free agency. And because we have free agency, and that the natural man is the enemy to God, you always are going to have that conflict. Am I doing something that's in the best interest for the church, or am I doing something that's in the best interest for Ramses? And before we jumped on this call, we were actually discussing that. And I think that's where it becomes polarizing, is, do we believe that we have free agency? Because if we believe we have free agency, then unfortunately, yes, a prophet technically could lead us astray, because they are still a man. They just have a mantle. I mean, if we go back and look in the Old Testament, why did David become not only the king, but to a degree the prophet? He became that because Saul began to lead the church on a path that the Lord was not wanting him to go on. And so, do I think President Woodruff was correct? Yes. But what I do also believe is that the Lord is not going to stop him from doing that. I believe that because the Lord's not going to take away his free agency. So I think if we take what President Woodruff said, then that means that the Lord would have came out of the bolt of lightning and a cloud and be like, President Young, what you said is wrong, because that's contrary to what I've taught you in the Doctrine and Covenants through the first 133 sections of the Doctrine and Covenants. And then he would have chastised him publicly. But that's not what the Lord does. And so if we look at it that way, yeah, technically a prophet could lead the church astray. Do I think it would happen? No, I think that what would happen is the prophet would have some unsanctimonious health issue and pass away. And I'm not saying that's what happened like with President Nelson or any of the prophets, but I think that something like that would happen. I think one of the things that I've learned is if the prophet's not in alignment with the gospel and with Jesus Christ, that a change would be made, but the change will be made after a term my friends and I say when things go bad is after the wheels have fallen off the wagon. And I think that happens because the Lord wants us as members of the church, as his followers, to be able to see how things fell apart. If he stops it immediately, then we have no opportunity to see, oh, well, that was wrong. As opposed to when we use Brigham Young as an example, Brigham didn't actually make a statement under the mantle of the prophet. He made it under the mantle of the territory governor. If you think about where he was, what they were doing, that's when he said it. Now he reinforces it as the prophet. But originally they weren't at general conference. They weren't even at church. They were at a legislative session when he said it. So I think we want to make things the same when they're not necessarily the same. So to your question, me personally, do I think yes? I think a prophet could lead the church astray. And that's not apostate, and I'm not trying to be apostate or any of that. I just think that the Lord loves us so much that he's not going to take away our free agency, because the reality is when we sin, he doesn't stop us from sinning. Now, we have the Holy Ghost to be like, Carolyn, I know you want to smack the taste out of that person's mouth, but it's probably in your best interest not to do that. And then Carolyn's like, but I really want to make me feel good on the inside. And the Spirit's like, well, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And like what he did with Joseph when he was petitioning to let Martin Harris take the manuscripts, he told him 3 times no. And then he was like, okay. And so after the 3rd time, he's like, okay, Stephanie, you decide to slap the taste out their mouth. I tried to warn you. And then whatever happens, happens.
But yes, I feel
better. Yes, it does feel better. But see, I think we conveniently forget those examples. That's in church history, that's in the Doctrine and Covenants, that he petitioned the Lord 3 times. The Lord was like, no. But let me ask one more time, just in case you didn't really mean no. Go ahead. And then we know that that's what got lost. I've heard historians say that that's the reason why Mosiah just starts. There's no intro to Mosiah, because a part of those 120 pages that were lost gave us the intro to Mosiah.
Oh.
King Benjamin, it's all of that, which I think that's a fascinating perspective. But we see that Joseph, in his young tenderness, trying to appease man, for all intents and purposes, he kind of went astray. We see what the consequence was, and we know that Joseph was restricted from being able to translate the Book of Mormon for a period of time until the Lord felt that he was sufficiently humbled and repentant to give him back that power. And so I think that's what would happen. I think we would see it would become, the Lord wants it to become public so that we as members of the church could learn from it. I just think that we only want to remember the things that are fun and happy and not painful, because nobody wants to suffer pain. Yes, Carolyn.
Well, how much do you think? Okay, so I'm bringing this down to a level like, we see leaders like Relief Society presidents or any leader in any part of the church lead based on what seems to me their background,
Mhm.
their priorities in life, their experiences that they've had. I mean, it just seems like with a prophet, all of that would play in big time, just like it does with us. And so part of it seems like, yeah, that, it's based on what they're thinking, what the prophets are thinking about, what questions they have, what their background is, what they're going through at the very moment.
Right.
And the Lord lets that all happen. I mean, he lets that happen in our ward houses. And
Right.
no matter what calling you have, you bring your background to that calling.
No, I agree. I agree 100%. It is, to me, so if I had a tie, shirt and tie on, I throw my tie over my shoulder so I can say this is a Ramsesism. So this is not a church doctrine anywhere. But I do believe what you say is true. And the reason why is because your background, learning, life experiences shapes decisions that you make.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
of the things I think we are all victim to, but we don't really think about it, is we all have generational trauma somehow.
Yeah.
Whether it's having members, Stephanie and I, having members of our families that were enslaved or who went through civil rights,
Yeah.
or you two as women who are offsprings of polygamy, or for all intents and purposes, a product of polygamy, in that with what you shared, Carolyn, that you and your deceased husband Jenkins, that you guys were still together. So all that kind of goes into, when you're dealing with people in a leadership position, how do you separate what you've gone through and what you feel from doing what the Lord asked you to? Which is why, instead of saying, well, we're all flawed and that's just going to be the problem, so our decision making is going to be jaded, why I say we battle with the natural man.
Yeah.
Because the natural man would have us withhold benefits to someone who needs it. I mean, the reality is the bishop's storehouse is there for one reason: to feed the needy. There's not ever a reason, and this is what I was taught as Elders Quorum president, there's not ever a reason we don't give a food order. There are reasons why we don't necessarily pay someone's bills, because we're paying that out of fast offerings, but we shouldn't ever withhold food from somebody in a leadership position, whether that's Rachel's current mantle as Relief Society president or when I was Elders Quorum president. Our responsibility, how I was taught, was we should figure out how we can take care of somebody more than how we can take away from someone. And I think, to your point, Carolyn, that's where our personal beliefs come in. And I think we see that more today in the environment that we all live in, because we can all agree that politics has become a lot of our religion. And we've allowed politics or the natural man, to supersede the direction that the spirit would give us.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rachel.
So I have like thought about this a lot because like I was telling you before, this hasn't necessarily been a hard thing for me, but I run into it often. Like it's often a difficult concept for people to say, I sustain, the prophet or leader and the mantle that's given to them, but I don't, so what does that mean? And I think one way I've really looked at it is when we talk about a prophet not leading people astray, I agree. He has his agency, and he comes with good and bad in him the same way all of us do. So the good that's in him or her is going to be great for the church, right? But there's going to be mistakes made in the process. But I guess I look at it as like God, or Christ for that matter, as our savior, will always be able to heal whatever the mistakes that are made. So if we turn to him, right? So even as on an institutional level, Christ can heal whatever mistakes are implemented or happen, because he's capable of doing that if we turn to him, if we are consistently seeking him and striving to understand him. And I think across the board, that's what happens. And so when we're dealing with an institute, like on a systems level and institutional level, that's gonna happen slower. I mean, that kind of just makes sense to me, because you kind of have to bring the whole group together, right? Like the whole group has to kind of go through this process of what that looks like and trying to figure things out. It's a little bit easier. I say it's easier. It's not ever easy to go through a repentance process or a change of heart process, but it's always going to bring about good fruits. And so I guess that's the way I look at it, that if as a whole, the institution and the people, because I guess I look at the church as the people within the church, if as a whole we are striving to become like Christ, Christ can heal. Christ will heal whatever happens. And so I guess that's the way I look at it, that I still kind of think, well, I mean, the prophets won't lead us astray because they're going to use their talents, and I have faith in them to use those talents that they've been given to do the job that God has given them to do. And whatever they do wrong, Christ will heal at some point if we are all consistently striving for that space. So that's kind of the way I look at it. So.
I like that. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Oh, I was trying to put it down. I'm trying to weave this all together in my mind. So, my opinion, the prophet should be a model on how we follow Christ. At the same, hold on. Somebody's calling me. At the same time, he is someone we look to, but it's only Christ and Jesus we put on the pedestal. Like you said, Ramses, your ideal is good because it's gospel principles, okay? But you needed to know, is it more you and what you want to do or what God wants to do? Okay.
Right.
And we can listen to the prophet, but we have to say, okay, but God, is that what you want me to do? And this is the way I see it, because I'm a very spiritual person, okay? You're right. It was all about politics, and that's where it went off the rails, okay? And being a prophet and having that type of responsibility for everybody in the world, that's daunting, okay? Not even Jesus could appease everybody, all right? He walked the earth. But the thing is that the best that anybody can do, even the prophet, is to remember to follow Jesus first. Follow what he said. People are talking about, oh, we should feed this person, not this. I'm sorry, he said there should be no poor among us. And if you feed others, you fed me, okay? And this, so it's just like you have the rule books. When it starts deviating off the plan, then you can say, that's not sitting right with me. I mean, even the priesthood, it's like you have scriptures. It says that in black and white. Was that the first time you read it in a set of scriptures? Right? No. God is the same today, yesterday, and tomorrow. Nothing changed. The only thing that changed was how you were behaving and how you read it and how you interpret it. So at a certain point, when it all boils down, yes, we do follow the prophet, and he is supposed to be, giving us this, like, the Lord said, whatever you're doing, stop it. Okay. That's not the way you're supposed to go. Okay. Pretty much, he's like the ultimate watchman. Okay. He's not herding us along like we're dumb sheep. God gave us agency. So, and like I said, you're fallible. I mean, I do stuff stupid all the time. Okay. And you're fallible. And to be in that position, this declaration, at first, when I read it, I kind of read it as far as polygamy goes. God would not let me or any other man on this issue lead you astray. That's how I read it. Now, if he said on any issue, did he say that? Then I would have said, okay, that's what he meant. But when I read it, it was like on this issue.
Right.
Okay. So, but yeah. Did I make myself clear there?
Yeah.
You made actually,
Really good point.
you made a really great point, and here's what I mean. Because, and Carolyn knows how I feel, and I'll say this till I turn blurple, because I'm not able to turn blue in the face, so it's kind of like purple. So that is our little break for laughter.
You're you. Go ahead.
No, but and I said this when I was with the Gathering of Tribes, it's hard for me to really talk about declaration number 1 because I'm a guy. And when I say the things I'm about to say, I'm not being dismissive or any of that. It's just simple. From my perspective, polygamy benefits me because it says I can have more than one wife. Now, in my little rational head, I'm like, there's some benefits to having more than one wife, but the benefits get outweighed by what I perceive to be the negative. And it's not negative to love more than one person, but if I'm married to the 3 of you, all of you want your time and attention. And if you're not getting your time and attention, there's problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I got problems with just one wife. I could not imagine the multiplicity of issues I could have with more than one wife. Like, when you think about, like, some of them were married, like Brigham was married to 18 women. Now some passed away, and I get all that. But I'm like, but can you imagine? There's only 30 days, 31, let's just say, we'll just make it even 30 days in a month. Somebody's gonna get left out. Somebody's not gonna get there 2 days. And obviously I'm making it funny, but that's kind of how I see it, though. I'm like, I'm trying to really be serious. But to declaration number 1, the way I looked at it was what you said, Stephanie, but more importantly, this is, to me, how we had a revelation that was put out for the world to see. It was implemented. The natural man corrupted what the Lord wanted to happen for the church. Do I believe that it was a revelation of God? Yes. But I also believe that revelation got corrupted because man is fallible. How did the Lord correct it? He didn't he didn't say, polygamy's bad, you're wrong, let's get away with it. Because of the articles of faith and because of the pressures from the U.S. government, a decision had to be made. What's more important for us? One of our other cornerstone beliefs is Forever Families to go to the temple to do temple work so that we can be forever families, is that more important, or is it more important for you to have more than one wife? Because if we continue to live polygamy, then the US government's going to confiscate all of our temples, and then we won't be able to have forever families anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, Revelation, and one of the things I said with the Gathering of Tribes is the one thing that these three have in common that I think gets missed is there was a deep desire for an answer and direction from the Lord. Joseph Smith wanted to be able to say to the world, this is what the LDS Church believes. Here are 13 tenets that we believe that we adhere to. Declaration number 1, you're getting outside pressure. I don't know what to do. You've got people who are doing polygamy, people who aren't. And again, polygamy wasn't a forced doctrine. Polygamy was, if you want to engage in polygamy, you can. But what we do know, because history teaches, that men were corrupting the doctrine of polygamy. Even the prophet Joseph was making it to what it wasn't, because he was doing things behind Emma's back. Now you can be like, oh, he was young, but he was the prophet, he could do whatever he wanted to. No, the prophet is still held accountable to his decision making, just like we little people are. He just has more responsibility. Declaration number 2, the same thing. We can say there's intense pressures from the public, but when you study it, you know that with President McKay, they were looking to try to determine if this was just a policy or if this was revelation. Had determined it was policy and wanted to have it removed and reversed, but everybody wasn't on board. We know that it took Spencer W. Kimball so long after he received revelation because he wanted to get buy-in and help change the hearts of all the leaders. Because if he didn't change the hearts of the leaders, nothing would change. And he recognized that. And there's credence given to his insight to know how the men that he worked with, First Presidency, Quorum of the 12, and all the 70s, how they would respond. And so I think we continue to miss that. We continue to miss, why do we have these three and why they're lumped together? And that's why I believe they are. But again, back to polygamy. It's hard for me as a guy to talk about it because it only been to me, I get all the benefits. There's some negative repercussions, like I illustrated with the three of you. I'm like, I don't know how a guy does it. I don't want that. I mean, it seems like it'd be cool, but I'm good. I'm good. I'm good with one, and we'll just work it out.
Yeah. I think those are all really good points. And hopefully, I feel like this is something, we're at a point in time, I think, in the history of the church and the world, really, that people are starting to digest and think about these things a little bit more. I hear people talking a little bit more about this. So I think that this will continue to be a discussion moving forward in the church in general about what this all means. So I kind of look forward to the upcoming years to see where this all goes. To the point of Declaration 2, it's interesting to me because the first thing, and I know this has been talked about, and I feel like I don't know if we need to belabor the point because a lot of people have talked about this, but the idea being that in the actual manual, it says we don't know why the priesthood, we don't know why it happened. We don't know why they weren't made available. And as much as I would like to say that that is true, it's really hard for me to say that that's true given all the historical information we have now. And I think we even have more historical information now than we did even 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, right? When we first did this, back when the Convolved curriculum was out. We have even more now to show that this really, we do know why. I think you could probably still pull some things up for interpretation, right? Like we can't read people's minds, but I do think we have enough information to show we do know why. And so I don't know, Ramses, if you want to like go through some of those things that historically we actually do know. Here history has shown us, and it's been, now we know a lot of things now that we didn't know even 4 years ago.
Right. I think the first one is, and I've said this, is this is not about if Brigham Young was a racist or not. I think we are in such a world that we want to put labels on people. And for me personally, just because of personal experiences, for me, it's not about whether he was a racist or not. It's not about if in 1852 white people were racist. I think the consensus is that white people were racist as a whole, not as an individual, but as a whole. But we also know there were white people who weren't racist. But the thing I think that gets missed under there is that just because I didn't think that I was an abolitionist and I didn't think that you should be a slave doesn't necessarily mean I thought we were equal.
Right.
And that's the thing so let's deal with that layer of it, because I'm not going to say that Brigham was racist. I think Brigham's policy, his decision, can be said that it was rooted in racism. The emotional aspect of it, because I think it was an emotional decision. It wasn't a logical decision. And what's going on is William Appleby goes to the East and he finds that Q. Walker Lewis's son is married to a white woman. And the prevailing thought in the 1840s and 1850s is the term amalgamation, that if a black man and a white woman are married and they have children, that their children will be somehow distorted, that the white woman's womb will become barren. All these crazy things that some crazy doctor, I don't remember his name, he came up with. Paul cites his name in the book. These are things that you're dealing with. You're dealing with 1847, Q. Walker Lewis is one of the best elders that we have, and he's a black man. And then 5 years later, we get what we get. And I think that's where I think there's the disconnect. Well, how could he say this, but he said that? Because just because he thought that black people could be good people and they were good men doesn't mean he thought we were equal. Because even in the legislative session, he says, if we're to make the black men equal as us to be able to vote, that's like, what do you say, a mule or something, just like, so it's not about him being racist. It's about, he didn't think that black people, men in particular, were on his level. And he used the prevailing thought that black people were the curse of Cain or the seed / curse of Ham. So when you look at it from that perspective, I'm not being dismissive, and I'm not saying I'm forgiving Brigham, though I have forgiven Brigham. It is a prevailing thought in the time. And so one of the things that we learned from being with LaJean Caruth was that in being with her opened my eyes to a lot more. It's like, you hear things, but then you're with her and you hear her talk, who's been studying him and reading his writings and his words. So she, more so than to me, any Brigham Young descendant, becomes more of an authority because she's like, I got all of his words. I'm studying his words. And then you learn that Brigham is, in our modern day term, he's pigheaded and he's stubborn and he's got a temper and he's not going to back down when push comes to shove. Do I believe that Brigham said what he said and he meant it? Yes. Do I believe that Brigham was instantly apologetic about it? Yes. I also believe that because he and Orson Pratt were arguing about it publicly, it emboldened Brigham to put a line in the sand and said, I'm not crossing this line. This is what I said. I mean it. I said it with my chest. And if you don't like it, I don't care. And I'm not backing off of it because his pride would not let him say, I made a mistake, forgive me. Now, I think he's asked for forgiveness now that his light and understanding has been increased since he's been on the other side of the veil. And he is looking for us. He's looking for current prophets and leaders to fix it. The problem I see is technically, like I told Carolyn, no, we don't know why Brigham did what he did. History leads us down a road where we can come up with pretty good conjecture of why he did what he did, but technically we don't know. The problem with that statement is you're not giving and you're not creating a space for members of the church to heal adequately so that we as a body can move forward. Because as long as you hold on to we don't know, then we can run into people who are like, well, I think it was revelation, going back to declaration number 1. Oh, well, black people were invalid. They weren't as valiant in the premortal existence.
Mm.
And then the question I always pose, I see you, Carolyn, is does the scriptures, when we read about the war in heaven, what does it say? This is just Rams, this is my tie still over my shoulder. What does it say about those who were on board?
Mm-hmm.
They were part of the third that went with Satan. So that leads me to believe that if you were with Satan, you were less valiant than everybody else. Because if you were valiant, you would have gotten a body. Because I believe that if you were all or nothing, I believe it was either I'm on board 100%, and if it's not 100%, I'm sorry, you're not coming to the party. Because that's what the Lord was looking for. He was looking for 100%. And I even, when you look in Genesis in our translation, and when the Lord is talking to Cain before Cain makes a decision to kill Abel, I used to read that and was like, oh, that's interesting. And then one day I was reading, I was like, the Lord is pleading with Cain not to go down that path. Because if he goes down that path, he knows what's going to happen. He knows that if you make this decision, you're going to be too far gone and I'm not going to be able to do nothing for you. And to me, that's one of the few times in the scriptures we see the Lord pleading with someone not to make the decision that they want to do. I don't think it was a decision to kill Abel, but it was a decision to really listen to what Satan was telling him to do.
Mm.
Which then, once we make that decision that we're going to go the path of the natural man, there are obviously always going to be consequences. In this case, Cain kills his brother. But what did the Lord do for Cain? He put a mark upon him to protect him, so that if anyone tried to hurt Cain, they would be punished for hurting Cain. It's fascinating. If you look at it that way, that he tried to help him, and even after he went the wrong direction, he still loved him enough to protect him. And I think that's what we have to look at. We have to look at that Brigham made a decision, but I always go back to, but what about the prophets after Brigham?
Mm-hmm.
They had a decision, they had a choice, and they made the choice because of the natural man, back to Wilford Woodruff, to lead the church astray. They actually did. I mean, if you want to be technical, they see, to me as a white person, he's like, oh, he doesn't lead us astray. But as a black person who was denied priesthood and temple access, he led the church astray because that was not congruent or in alignment with the doctrine of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like I'm being harsh, but really I'm not. We are dealing with facts. This is not even Ramses giving Ramses' opinion. It's fact. Fact is, if we want to say that a prophet doesn't lead the church astray, he led the white members astray because he told you, and he and other prophets said that it was okay to restrict black people from the black men from the priesthood and black people from the temple, which was not congruent with what the Lord had said. The Lord said that the gospel is to go to everyone, and everyone is alike in my eyes, and everyone is supposed to enjoy the same level of benefits.
Yeah.
But we made the choice to not. What you got, Carolyn?
Well, yeah, I really like what you said, and it kind of, help me with this. I've been thinking about something lately, and what I've been thinking about is all of the structures at that time were set up to benefit white people. And so even if individually somebody made a decision like Orson Pratt, the structures were set up so against people of color that it was impossible to have equity at that time because the structures were so uneven.
Right.
And so in some ways you can say we do know what happened because the structures were so they were set up so that Black people could not have equality.
Right.
And so even the leaders after Brigham Young, they were a part of that same structure for 150 years. Then with civil rights, some of the structures changed with some of the laws. But I mean, even today, the structures are unequal.
Right.
In areas. But so that made me think, wow, it I don't know, it was even bigger than an individual making a decision that Black people could have the priesthood, because so many of the structures had to change before there was a lot of equality in society, in our religion, in every aspect of life. I don't know. I'd love to hear that's what I've been thinking about lately.
I want to share something. No, I like what you said. So hold on. I got to find it.
Okay.
So a few days ago, after Friday, Dana sent me this post from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Facebook group. And this is what it says. I've been trying to understand the leadership structure in the LDS Church. Do you know why the apostles have historically been white? I'm just trying to learn more. You saw that. Did you see that, or did you see what I said?
I didn't see that. Yeah.
So, and I wasn't paying attention when I pulled it up. So my business has been responding, and I'm like, I purposefully try to keep my personal life and business separate. So you can see crazy stuff on my personal Facebook page, but on my business page, all you see is food.
Yeah.
And I leave it that way. So I didn't realize it until some people were responding back and they liked it. So some of the things that people were saying, for this, like, I'm going to read just part of what this lady says. She's like, first, as someone who is not white, I will say the color of our leaders, hold on a second. The color of our leaders means nothing to me because I know they have been called by revelation. For me, it's that simple. And I'm like, okay, that's true. But you're talking about today, and we're going to use that word presentism. You're talking about today. She's talking about historically. And then you got some people who, then she says something like, and I'm not going to read the rest of what she says because I think she is Hispanic, she's Latinx, but she's white adjacent. She's she could kind of morph into the white world and nobody would be like, oh, you're not one of us. Then someone's like, for the same reason the 12 apostles of Jesus were originally all Jewish, the movement started in one cultural context. Now the LDS has increased in its diversity. Someone's like, the simple answer, leadership of the church has historically reflected the membership demographics of the time. And someone said, I'm not understanding how the color of someone's skin would answer a question about the structure of the church. And so they go on and on and on, but a lot of the comments are all that way. And it was disturbing because honestly, you're not answering her question. And I just simply said, here's a perspective I feel that everyone's missing because you're disregarding the impact as a result of priesthood ban and temple restriction. There were plenty of worthy Black men who held the priesthood who could have become apostles if the priesthood wasn't taken from them. And then, because, my cooking mind, I was like, just something to marinate on. Because I think that's something, honestly, that is missed in all of their statements. And there were like tons of that I went through and read before I commented, because I'm like, you have Greenflake, you have Elijah Abel, you have Q Walker Lewis, you've got Quack Lewis, you've got all of these Black men who held the priesthood. Now, the one thing that doesn't get talked about prior to the priesthood ban is that if you were still enslaved, you couldn't hold the priesthood as a Black man. Kind of crazy, but that's what it was. So we move forward. So that's the reason why you had limited, but like we've discussed, Carolyn, in our dinner group, but it's like, it's a generational wealth thing. When we look at leaders in the church today, how many of them can trace their lineage back to pioneers? How many of them are in certain callings, certain leadership positions? And when I say that, I mean like Area 70s, Journals Authority 70s, no matter what quorum they're in, whose parents are current apostles.
Right. And with mission presidents, you've got to have money to be able to do that.
Right.
And mission presidents, that is a line to further leadership. So
right. So when you think about that, what would our church look like today if there was no priesthood ban and temple restriction? You would have Black American apostles. And, someone can be like, well, are you sure? How many, if you just look at 1900 to 1930, how many thriving, and you can even become more current than that, but how many thriving Black communities were burnt to a crisp? The citizens were all killed or ran off their property, and that history has been erased.
mm-hmm.
So we think about that and we think about wealth. We're not talking about poor people, because if you own land, you got money.
Mm-hmm.
in essence, because you've got something that you can mortgage, you can take loans out on, but all that was taken from them when they were ran out of town, and then their property was taken and sold for dirt cheap. But if you look at generational legacy within the church, you could have someone with the last name Flake or the last name Abel or the last name Lewis who is an apostle. We could have already had a Black prophet, potentially, if we didn't have that priesthood ban and temple restriction in place. And I think that's why I said that, is it's not about a reflection of the demographics of the church, because the church had, when you want to talk about religion, the church had a huge compared to other religions, maybe not so huge, maybe not so huge because you just see all white people, but it had a huge black population. It just dwindled over time because black people were frustrated about how they were being treated at church. Why do I want to go to church with people who treat me like butt when I can go over here and get the love and the nourishment and feel safe over there? And so that's just me, but I think we miss that often because we just think, oh, the church was here in America and it's a white church and that's just what it is and that's the reason why. But the reality is it wasn't always that way. Yes, Stephanie.
I hate to digress, but something just hit me the wrong way. Carolyn, did you say that you have to have money to be a temple president?
Mission president.
Mission president?
I think you do. Okay, this is my reasoning, Stephanie, and I may be wrong, but you've got to be able to not work for the years that you're serving. So it seems like you've got to have some kind of accumulation of wealth to be able to leave a job and serve as a mission president.
So Carolyn's point,
That
I'll give you.
that just violates all gospel principles to me. How many times has Jesus said, "Leave your purse"?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
so that's
so
all I.
hold on, Stephanie. Hold on. So you're one of your General Authority 70s, President Ames, who's from Missouri. When I was still in Texas, he was the mission president for the Fort Worth mission. He's high-powered attorney there in Missouri. He left. He was, I think he was a partner when he left. He may not have been. Maybe he was just one of the lawyers, but I know he's a partner now. But he left and was there for 3 years. And I've heard what Carolyn said. I've also heard that if you don't have money to sustain, that the church gives you a stipend to subsist. But still,
Okay.
you're still leaving what you got. But I've most of the mission presidents that I've ever met or that I know all had, before they became mission presidents, all had really big banking jobs. Like our General Authority 70, Elder Rowe, he was in international business and was, I'll just say that. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe my statement was too general. That may not be true for every mission president, but it just seems like you've got to have some kind of income to be able to to be able to not work for a while.
At least I believe that may be true for U.S. mission presidents.
Yeah, maybe so.
But maybe international, maybe not as much, just because depending on where you come from. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm sure
I just wanted to clarify it.
I'm glad
you know
you
what? The rich man in the New Testament would be highly upset about that statement.
But he still had to leave his money.
Yeah, but he's leaving his money, but they're leaving their money, but they're going back to it. He was told to give up everything.
Well, you can give up everything if you just got somebody who's taking care of it for you.
Yeah, I just want to clarify.
All right, so I kind of wanted to end with I think that gives us a good idea of the history of kind of some of the, I think, implications of what happened before. And I kind of wanted to end with this. I liked this question, but I also found it a little like, I don't know, like I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this one, but I do think it's something good to think about, and possibly we could talk about it a little bit. It says, as you read Official Declaration 2, what do you learn about the Lord's process for guiding the policies of his church? And then the next part I kind of want to tweak it a little bit, but I'll read it to you first what they said. They said, ponder how you have learned to trust the Lord even when you don't have a perfect understanding. But I also would say, I think that is a good question to think about. But also, and we kind of already taught to this, but ponder how we trust the Lord and this gospel, even when we have imperfect leaders. And I think the Declaration 2 actually is a really good case study for these questions.
I do.
So what do we learn about the process for guiding policies in the church from this? And how do we continue to trust and have faith, given what we know about the proclamation? And really, I do believe it was a revelation, right? I do believe Declaration 2 was a revelation. I think it took a revelation to end what was in place at the time. So what are your guys', is it Ramses first or whoever else wants to? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the question, the struggle I have with the question is, if you're not versed in the history of the process, the question can be very dismissive. The average member of the church doesn't realize how long Spencer W. Kimball struggled with this and how long, like the years that he worked to first change the hearts of leaders, especially after he received the revelation. So if you don't realize, so if all you know is, okay, he got the answer in April or in May of 78, and then it came out in June. Well, he didn't really do that much work. That didn't really require that much work. If you don't know that David O. McKay spent years trying to find out the truth, oh, I mean, it's happenstance. So I think the question is dismissive because it doesn't talk about the due diligence that President Kimball put in. With that said, what does it teach you? It teaches you that if you hear something that you don't understand, it teaches you to go to the Lord to find comfort. And I think that is what the biggest takeaway is, that you have to find comfort in the Lord, like you said earlier, Rachel. I think that reason why it took a revelation and it was such a great insight on President Kimball's part was because he felt and got answered through prayer that only through revelation would this help heal the church. The problem that I don't think he foresaw or really understood was how entrenched in people's hearts this really was. And it's not just about how entrenched it was in people's hearts, but in the culture of the church. When we talk about the culture of the church, if we begin today teaching that it was not of God, that it was of man, it's not my kids or my grandkids, it'd be my great grandkids who will be in a position to be able to say, hey, look, yes, we know this and we can say that this is what we've done. But the thing is that I learned from working on this training that Darius taught me was that he said, what is the greatest tool that Satan has employed to keep the children of God away from each other and from God? He said it was racism. And he's like, it's not even racism, black and white. It's Chinese versus Japanese. It's Irish versus English. And he, we usually go through all the different isms that we have that throughout the history of the world that has caused people to fight. Racism puts us closer to the big and spacious building, and those prejudices and those bias in our hearts keep us looking at the big spacious building than it does having us look at the tree of life and wanting to hold onto the rod and be on the path. And my hope is that as the years go by, that we get more leaders who are willing to say it boldly, like Elder Gerard Corey did, that we have to start with ourselves. We have to fix ourselves before we can try to do anything else, which goes back to the parable of the beam and the mote. How can I tell you, Rachel, that you've got a beam in your eye when I got a mote in mine? And that's what we're dealing with right now, especially in Utah, when we have so many congregations that everybody looks the same. With what Marion went through, I'm teaching a lesson and people like, Marion's calling me racist. Well, the sarcastic, argumentative person to me would say, if you think Marion's calling you racist, maybe you're racist. Did that ever cross your mind that maybe you are racist because you are finding offense to what she's teaching? Because if you weren't racist, you'd be like, oh, yeah, I mean, I can see that. That's something we should be working on because, we should be better. But if you're racist, you'd be like, oh, dagger to the heart. She made it personal. Get her out of here. She's falling away. Anyway, that's what I got.
Any other thoughts? Yeah.
It's tied up. Yeah.
What do we learn? What do you guys feel? What is the Spirit teaching you?
I like that. I think that's something I can really use is go to God, go to Christ with questions.
That's the way it should be. I mean, I'm in this church to get closer to God, not to get closer to man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I can get closer to man all by myself, but I need to get closer to God. And that I think one of my friends is like, well, what do you do with Christians who won't do this, that, and the other? And it's just like, well, the bottom line is, and my favorite song in the whole wide world is Michael Jackson. We got to start with the man in the mirror, or me.
We should play that right now.
So the bottom line
Should have had it cute.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that we all have to start, like you said, Ramses, with us and take care and fix what's wrong with us and staying centered in Christ. I mean, this is what it's all about. That's why we're in the church. So sometimes I just want to say, well, stop with the stupid stuff. What did Jesus say? Okay, you guys are talking this, that, and the other. Wait a minute. Did you laid your hands upon me to get the Holy Ghost to teach me? So I'm going to ask God, and then I'm going to wait for the Holy Spirit. And if you say something sideways, I'm going to go to God and ask him and wait for the Holy Spirit to interpret it for me. And I think if we look at it more that way, then we can move on to step 2. And step 2 is how to efficiently fight off the adversary. Okay? Wait a minute, hold up. I think I just put it away. Because Isaiah says, once we get over all this stuff on how we act with one another, we can get to the bigger fight, which is Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Okay? So, we need to be centered in Christ, be one, and then we can get on with the real fight. But right now, Satan just has us fighting each other, so we don't have time to fight him.
Yeah, those are all really good thoughts. The thing that comes to my mind with this is that when we talk about what's the process of becoming like God, this is the process of becoming like God. It is this wrestle. It is this bumping of heads. It is this tension. And I remember thinking that one time because I was having some issues with some people in my family, and it just felt so hopeless. And I asked that question because I was like, I don't know what to do with, I don't know how to deal with this. I don't know what to do with this. And I really was contemplating this idea. And that idea came to me that this is how you become like God. This is the process that you were sent here to do. And I see that same theme in Declaration 2 and in the whole leading up to it. If we're going to become a godlike people, this is the process to do it. It is in the trying to wrestle. It is in the trying to actually figure out what is right and what isn't right. And with having differences of opinions and overcoming some of those natural man tendencies, and we're doing it together, like as a group. We're all trying to do this, and I think that's entirely why we are here. And so for me, it's more, this is the process that brings us into the state. Is it an easy one? Absolutely not. Is it quick? No. But this is what it is. And the idea that we're looking to Christ as like the example and to be disciples of Christ, he is the one that shows us, right? That this is how we do this process, guys. And this is what it looks like. And this is what you need to do. So I really do see the whole wrestle with Blacks in the priesthood and the racism and sort of these tensions going on. I really do see that as it's not, I don't know that God designed it this way. It's just, it is this way. And God knows that. God knows that this is how we get to be like him. And so to me, this is exactly what the process is. And yeah, if we want to be disciples of Christ, we're going to turn to Christ. We're going to keep trying to work at this and keep trying to move forward in this space. So I think it's a really good example of exactly what it takes to do this, as imperfect we all are. So. All right. Any other thoughts before we finish up? All right.
Amen.